from the heart of Dubai, where tomorrow is being built today, to the world. Welcome to the CTO Show with Mehmet. Here, we redefine technology and reimagine possibilities. With Mehmet, delve into the riveting realms of AI, cybersecurity, and digital technology. Experience the thrilling highs and lows of startups. Immerse yourself in the spirit of entrepreneurship and witness the future of business innovation being written in real time. Now, without further ado, let's tune in and explore the future.
Hello and welcome back to a new episode of the CTO Show with Mehmet. Today I'm very pleased joining me, Sam Obletz. Sam, thank you very much for joining me on the show. As I was telling you before we started the recording, the way I love to do it is I keep it to my guests to tell us a little bit more about themselves. So same with you. Tell us a bit more about your background, what you are up to currently, and then we can take the conversation from there.
Great. And first of all, Mehmet, thanks for having me on the show. It's an honor, and I'm excited to chat with you over the next half an hour or so. So I'm Sam, CEO of Claim. My journey started in Portland, Oregon in the United States. Grew up here. I started tinkering at a young age, started two really small, and I'll emphasize that, small businesses when I was 10 and 11 years old. The first one was a computer integration company where I built gaming rigs and then sold them on Craigslist. And the second was a freelance web design company where I'd go out and market, I'll redo your WordPress site, or I'll, build a CMS for you. And no one on the other side knew that it was a 11-year-old. And that was kind of fun and that was empowering. Also, when you're 11, you don't usually have living expenses. So that allowed me to kind of use income from those revenue streams and kind of build and tinker and kind of, create over the next few years. After I left home, I went to the East Coast, went to undergrad, and then I moved to New York City. I worked in investment banking at Goldman in New York for a number of years, and then moved into the investing side, investing Goldman's balance sheet. That was a really inspiring experience because I got to meet some incredible founders from a venture capital perspective, and that inspired me to go become a founder one day. That led me back to graduate school where I reunited with my closest friend, Tap, who became my co-founder, and we've been building Claim ever since for the past 3 years. So it's been quite the journey, and to do it with kind of your best friend is a special level of trust and fun and celebrating the highs and the lows.
Absolutely. And thank you again, Sam, for being on the show today. So, I just want to ask you this because some of my guests, they mentioned also they started very early. Like I had one guest actually who they started, in starting a company, but they started kind of an entrepreneurship journey like very early, like at 7 years and 8 years. So does that give you I would say competitive advantage, if we can use the term, and in the sense that you learn a lot about the challenge early. So when you actually, for example, when you start Claim, you had something that you faced before, or maybe you've learned about before, that helped you to overcome the challenges that usually startup faces, like especially in the early days. So that's something that helped you, Sam?
So to kind of date myself here, we're talking 2001, 2002-ish, when I worked on this stuff. And so from a technical perspective, or, a tech stack, or, anything of the like, nothing really translated there. But what did translate is appreciating kind of the joys of building something. And that probably is the greatest competitive advantage, Mehmet, because, entrepreneurship is a difficult journey. It's a singular journey. It often can be a lonely journey. And so at least to have like the twinkle or the glimmer of kind of what it feels like to build something definitely carries through now, even if it's subconscious.
That's absolutely, something which also like I've learned myself, because I can claim also that maybe I didn't start a company or a business in the sense of a business, but very early in my childhood, I would say, like I was going with my father to his shop, and I was trying to learn how trade happens. And of course, these things comes back to you, when you grow up. Now, one thing that always I ask founders, and maybe it sounds like kind of a traditional question, So talking about your current startup Claim. So what I like to understand, Sam, is how did you spot, that there's a problem that need to be solved? And I'm sure like there's a moment you said, okay, you and your co-founder, Tap, there's now a need that we need to start building this now. So tell me a little bit more about the background, why you decided to build the company, and what kind of problem you still, of course, aiming to solve with it.
Yeah. So, first of all, from going back to kind of our previous point, the motivation to us is so important. And when Tap and I talked about the type of company and kind of the audacity or ambition that we wanted to run after, we wanted to build something big, and we wanted to build something at consumer scale. And so the kind of mantra that we repeated in at least my mind was, build something big, design something beautiful. And so what we started thinking about when we were in our dorm room in grad school was really understanding the experience of marketers today and understanding the experience of consumers today. And I think the beautiful thing about Claim is that all of us can relate to what Claim is trying to accomplish on the consumer side. And so I'll kind of share 3 insights that to us culminated in the early idea for Claim. The first insight is that as consumers, our consumer attention is being pulled in a million different directions right now. It's being diluted by the current social media platforms. So if you think about, scrolling on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok, these days we're interrupted by either influencers trying to sell us products or sponsored posts. And the job to be done on Instagram isn't necessarily for us to go buy things, but that's certainly the job to be done for the platform. And so there's a fundamental mismatch there. And I think that resulted in a lot of us saying, we're done with social media. And, as an example, I quit Facebook in 2013. I never got on Instagram because of being kind of dissatisfied with the current system. The second aspect that Tap and I noticed, again, mostly among our peers, was that our transactions or our kind of interactions with one another feel impersonal. And what I mean by that is, am I liking your post on social media? Am I sending you a Venmo or a Zelle? Basically, our digital interactions have reduced the vivacity of our personal interactions. And we think that there's something about, the human connection that needs to be restored. So that's kind of this consumer theme that we're playing at. The last part, which really kind of completed the puzzle for us, was talking to the faculty at Harvard, and particularly the marketing faculty, and interviewing, dozens and dozens of marketers, and understanding that we're at a unique time where marketing is more difficult than ever. We've seen the cost to acquire a customer, kind of the CPA, triple in the past 8 years across the board. That means that if you're you're an entrepreneur, you're a founder, you're running a marketing organization, getting your P&L to pencil is more difficult than ever because you're trying to bring in a customer through the door and your unit economics aren't working. Multi-touch attribution, which is an industry term for if we bring in a new customer, where did that customer come from and how do we allocate value to the sources that brought in that customer? That's an insanely complex task, and it's only getting more complex. And then these sort of thematic shifts in privacy, Google phasing out cookies, Apple's do not track or anti-tracking technology, GDPR in the US, CCPA, all of these things are kind of converging on creating a really difficult experience for marketers. And so, if Tap and I asked ourselves, what if we could reimagine what the brand and consumer relationship looked like? What if it didn't have to be this kind of push and pull, and instead we could create moments of delight for consumers to have experiences with their friends around new brands? And therefore, we kind of set off to replace advertising. And, I say that kind of flippantly, but that is the goal for Claim, is to replace advertising as we know it today.
That's very great, Sam. Now, can I say or claim, and funny enough, you claim, your startup name is Claim, that you try to take the word of mouth, and usually the word of mouth happens between friends, family, and so on, and then take this experience and kind of digitize it. Can I say this is what you try to do?
Yeah, that's exactly it. So word of mouth marketing has always been the holy grail, because, and I think all of us have had this experience, if a friend or a family member recommends something to me, I am many multiples more likely to go try that thing. And so there have been various ways to try to productize word of mouth in the past. Most of them come off pretty inauthentic, but on Claim, what we're doing, the value that we're delivering to consumers is that you save money when you discover new brands with friends. And for brands, we allow you to acquire and engage the next generation risk-free. And by next generation, Claim is all about Gen Z, which in the United States, I think the beginning and end are a little bit blurry, but we focus on the college age demographic, which is where culture is defined in a lot of ways. And that's why it's so interesting for marketers, but it's also so important for us to capture what that demographic looks for, and in particular, what they're recommending to each other from a word of mouth standpoint.
Now, I understand like you focus on the consumer space and the Gen Z, of course. But have you thought, or do you think that this is something that can be applicable to other generations? And because if you think about it, actually, Sam, it's like someone like me, I think they call us the baby boomers. So do you think that, because at that time, think, okay, so I was growing up when the internet just came, like I was just like probably 17 or 18 years at that time. Same thing with the social media. And, when I talk to a lot of my friends, or same of my generation, so they remember that, okay, like we used to, for example, to discover the next, let's say, video game from someone who actually bought it, and then he would start or she would start recommending to others, right? So I think it's not maybe only Gen Z. So have you experimented with other, I know, like, of course, it's very good practice to start with one segment of the market, but do you see that applicable later to other generations or maybe for the mass? This is one, and I know it's like it's a tough question, but take your time answering it. The second part of the question is, I always ask why we can't have the same for business to business.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, consumer, it's very straightforward, it's very logical. Can be applied to even B2B, in your opinion?
So question one is a good one, and you're also spot on with our intent with starting with a single demographic. The reason that we started with Gen Z is because it's a lot easier to understand what kind of college age students are doing and then move up market to millennials, Gen X, et cetera, than it is to start with older folks and move down market. At least that is our hypothesis. But to your question, we see Claim as, if not universally, then broadly applicable to every consumer in a way, because we believe every consumer should have great experiences with their friends, should be able to discover new things, and should want to trust kind of the recommendation of their friends. And, there are various examples that we point to in the industry, Honey being one of them. So Honey is a browser extension that was acquired for about $4 billion by PayPal several years ago. And Honey would just sit in your browser, and when you checked out in an e-commerce flow, it would automatically append coupons to your cart, and therefore save you money and create kind of a little moment of delight or a little confetti moment. And so we use that as kind of table stakes for what we're trying to do with Claim, where if you imagine that Claim is an app where it saves you money, but it also creates multiplayer or real world experiences with your friends, then we can create something exceptionally powerful that is still applicable from, the time you first get your first debit card or credit card, all the way through, your golden years. So that's my answer to kind of where we're going to go with Claim. It's just a question of timing and when we expand into these other demographics. On the B2B question, my understanding is the extent of what exists today is something like a G2 or a Trustpilot, where there are kind of trusted sites that verified purchasers can leave lengthy B2B reviews on. And in addition, there are certain kind of referral schemes or give one and get one schemes. But what I haven't seen is outside of probably really dense founder communities any sort of social proof for recommending B2B solutions. So in other words, I'm not aware of a broad social network that is designed for founders or operators for recommending B2B solutions. So if somebody thinks that's a compelling idea, run at it. Could be cool.
Yeah, you just gave a good business idea to start, because to your point, again, nothing against the websites you just mentioned, but people always have, especially if it's a review, if it's someone just writing a review, and especially now with the AI, oh, maybe the AI have wrote this.
Oh, yeah.
So they always have this kind of thought that might not be real, or that might be biased somehow. Nevertheless, what I'm interested to ask you about, Sam, now, because you are all about, marketing a service and then back to the consumer space, of course. So out of curiosity, how are you actually acquiring your own customers?
Yeah. So it starts with creating a moment. And in the US, we've had, a ton of these moments over time. It used to be watching Friends on Thursday nights and talking about it on Friday. Obviously, there are big macro moments like the Super Bowl or any Taylor Swift related news. More recently, there were apps like Be Real or HQ Trivia. And the idea there is you're bringing everyone together to have this sort of collective experience. And we do the same thing with Claim, and we do a big drop, and we call it The Drop. And it's Thursdays at 11 a.m. Eastern time. And what that allows us to do is create a lot of hype and anticipation every week about the drop happening. And during the drop, you're going to get your brand for the week to go try out. And so we text our users, and everyone comes to the platform at the same time. We then create that sort of confetti or moment of delight, that I mentioned with PayPal Honey. And what this allows us to do is not only create hype for the drop, but also fear of missing out. And so when we're launching, if you're not on Claim, you're hearing all of your friends talk about the drop happening. And that is our own kind of word of mouth, organic marketing for Claim. And very tactically, what we do to launch is we start in certain geographies and geofence it. And so we started on Harvard's campus first. Within about a month, we had half of Harvard's campus on Claim. And then now I think we're at 70 to 80% of Harvard's campus is on Claim. We then took that sort of geofenced approach and applied that to other universities in the United States, not just kind of Ivy League universities, but also great state schools like UT Austin, University of Michigan, UCLA, USC, ASU. And being in those sort of dense communities is kind of a hack that many consumer startups use to grow quickly within kind of a word of mouth context. And so there are various kind of feet on the street or boots on the ground motions that we use in order to activate at a campus. But we now have a playbook where if we want to go launch in a given geography, we know what we need to do to lay the groundwork. And within a few weeks, we can be at thousands and thousands of consumers.
Again, I love because you're applying your concept within your company itself, which is fantastic. So because it would be very weird if you would tell me, yeah, I'm using an ad to get this. So it's
we're buying ads. That would be antithetical.
Now you mentioned something about social media and the use of social media. So someone, and again, I'm not asking this question to challenge, but just as they say, food for thought, right? So someone might say, yeah, you're right. We see a lot of things that we don't want to see usually over there, but the population is there. So why I don't take the moment? And I know some platforms, sometimes they run really good, from price perspective. So their CPA is still affordable for many. Mainly, maybe it's Instagram, TikTok, these platforms. If I want to think about Gen Z, right? And I've seen even, some people who talks a lot about another platform where you can give ads, which is X or Twitter formerly. So how do you see this? Do you think that this kind of conception that, okay, I need to follow the mass if I want to grow, because, the more people are on a platform, of course, I will not be able to bring all of them to my service or product, but, it's a large ocean. So just if I put my net, I'm going to get some fishes. Do you think this is really something still logical today to do? Or you believe, and you told me you don't have account anymore on some of these platforms, do you see it no, this gonna go nowhere from this point forward?
It's a great question. I think the self-aware and sophisticated marketers realize that the numbers aren't lying on these platforms. So I do agree you can probably find, especially if you're a brand growing incredibly quickly, a lot of value in, Instagram, Facebook, et cetera. And it certainly is a scale play. And it's a reliable play. And so if I'm a marketer allocating a $10 million budget, I know I can, put $10 million in, and some, slight multiple of that will come out. And in marketing, what we are looking at in the data is seeing that the return on ad spend, which is essentially the return on investment on Instagram, which is measured as essentially revenue that comes from each dollar of marketing spent, that has converged to about 2. And a 2x return on ad spend is difficult because that doesn't bake in anything about your own cost structure. That is purely top line. And when Instagram was 5-10 years ago, marketers were frequently getting 3 to 4x return on ad spend. And so clearly, if CPAs, to your point, for e-commerce are hovering in the $15 to $50 range, if not more, it is difficult right now to get a high return on ad spend on Instagram. But you are benefiting from the scale because all the consumers are there. The other difficulty, though, is you become beholden to the algorithm. I don't mean that in a scary way, the all-seeing, all-powerful algorithm, but it's the very real reality that if you try to pull back spend, you get penalized at the end of the quarter, and the algorithm itself is opaque and marketers tell us it's capricious. And so we're told all the time that Instagram and Facebook are like a drug, and part of what makes Claim appealing is that it is an alternative to these platforms. And so whereas we can't compete with the billions of people that are on Instagram yet, what we can offer with Claim is a very differentiated and captive audience in Gen Z. And more than anything, and this is maybe the most crucial learning for me, we have gotten people on Claim excited about seeing an ad every week. That's what the drop is we're showing you a brand that we think you'll like. And contrast that feeling of excitement and anticipation with, oh no, like another sponsored post, probably for like something I already bought. That's just a very different experience. So there are pros and cons, but the marketers that you see talking at conferences, the people that are trying to be industry leaders, they're always willing to try new things and try to capture the arbitrage before the rest of the market, wades in and causes what's happening on Instagram, which is a 2x return on ad spend.
Absolutely. It's I love, and ask this question because I'd love to see the perspective from your side, because I'm sure also when you prepared, kind of your business strategy, you've looked at the competition and you noticed all the pitfalls that they have. So it's great to hear this from you. Now, I know you have, you've done something which not everyone can do, which is securing funding from major players like Sequoia Capital, which is absolutely not a small feat, right? So I'm interested to know, about, how was the funding journey looks like, and did, your previous experience working in the investment side help you also in this? And I ask these types of questions to give some hints to fellow founders on their journey when they decide to raise funds. Yeah.
So we can talk for a long time about this, Mehmet, but I'll keep my thoughts brief. The first question I think any founder should ask is, what type of funding is right for my business? And there's this gravitation towards venture, but venture has certainly pros and cons. And the next question the founder should ask is, when is it right to seek outside capital? And there's a trade-off, because the more you can de-risk the business, the better valuation you can command, the less dilution that you'll therefore take. And if you can add capital at the right time and put that capital to work, that's only going to benefit kind of your growth trajectory. For us, we were fortunate to raise a pre-seed institutionally back at the end of 21, early 22, from two great investors. One, Sousa Ventures out of the Bay Area, and two, Box Group out of New York City. Both our partners there we work with, Chad Byers and Greg Rosen, respectively, have been absolutely lights out, just fantastic individuals. And so the kind of second learning from my journey is it's so important to find mission aligned, values aligned people that you're willing to build with for a decade, because when you're trying to build a venture scale business, you're not designing for a quick win. You're not designing for a 10 million, a 50 million, or $100 million exit, because that's not what you're essentially signing up for. You're signing up for a $1 billion plus exit, and that usually takes, based on U.S. equity markets or M&A or otherwise, a long time. And so we were fortunate to start with great investors, and we've since layered on some incredible folks, including Sequoia as well. We also had the benefit and curse of raising at different times in the fundraising cycles. We raised when capital was flush in the market. We also raised when capital was more constrained in the market. And the stories that you tell, what you emphasize, and kind of where you focus as a founder during those fundraisers is very different. And lastly, to answer your question directly, I did benefit from kind of seeing in small ways the investor's perspective on what a fundraise looks like, what you're solving for as an investor. And there's kind of the school of thought as an investor that you're buying a piece of a company. And so as a founder, then if you can orient your mindset around, I'm selling a piece of my company, this is why this should be interesting for an investor to add to their portfolio as an owner of my company. It's kind of the Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger mindset of they are owning a piece of your company. You are partnering together. And the more that you can kind of frame it that way, that's where we had success.
Great insight, Sam, again. And so did you see, also they get interested because you are, for example, talking to a new segment, which is the Gen Z, right? So this is a kind of an untapped market, or do you think it is just the idea of like you have large population that you can target? Like, is it like the market size that attracted the investors more, or is it actually your focus, or let's say your ideal customer profile that attracted them? Of course, I'm sure like when you went there and you raised the round, you must have some tractions, you did some market research and so on. But I'm interested to know like what was, I would say, in your opinion, the thing that they said, okay, this is a green light for us, we should go and do it.
It probably varies on each stage of funding, right? So at the pre-seed stage, it's about the team and the idea, and the product is maybe not even in existence, right? At the seed stage, it's team, product, traction, et cetera, et cetera. What we never had to contend with, fortunately, is questions over total addressable market, because we're going after essentially every consumer who has a credit or debit card. And so as opposed to, other startup ideas, we didn't have to have a TAM slide to talk about why this could be a big thing, which was great. But because we're kind of fishing in that larger pond, it meant that we had to be more precise about why this was the right opportunity. And to us, Claim is a marketplace business, and marketplace businesses are difficult to start, but once they get going and marketplaces start to balance, they're pretty unstoppable. And so if you think about, Uber or Airbnb or DoorDash or eBay, some of these marketplace businesses become the most enduring non-AI companies in recent memory. And so I think it was solving a specific need for marketers that is very acutely felt, combined with solving a very specific, actually generalizable need, I think, for consumers, which is we want to save money, We want to have better relationships with our friends. We want to discover new things. We want to create memories. And that sort of marketplace business that serves both sides of that market, I think, is probably the compelling aspect of what we're building.
Probably I wasn't intentionally aiming to have this conclusion, but I'm happy you mentioned something very important, Sam. And the reason I asked you like what attracted, because I think each startup is unique. Of course, like there are some common grounds when it comes to raising funds. Like, of course, you need to present your team, you need to do this. The message I was trying to convey, and you helped me a lot in this, is, founders, they should consider themselves unique, not only from what makes them different from the others. I mean, even the way they go and talk to the investors, because you see now people say, hey, you should do 1, 2, 3. This is how your pitch should look like. These are the slides. It's not that I'm saying this is wrong, but I always tell, founders like, okay, like these are samples for you or something that get you inspired to build your own thing, and you don't have necessarily to follow like 100%, all this, because sometimes you don't need some part of it. So I'm really happy you mentioned that. And the second thing you mentioned, which also like made me smile, when you said non-AI. And again, this shows that it's not always good to, just jump on the bandwagon, because yeah, you can still have very good, healthy business, a very good startup idea, and you don't have to put jargons and, hype words and, all these things to show yourself successful. So I'm happy you mentioned also this. Now, coming back to Claim, like, do you see it growing on a global level also as well? Do you have plans for scaling in the future? Like, tell me a little bit more about how you see Claim in, like, I would say, like in 3-4 years down the road from now.
Yeah, and I just wanted to key in on one point you said, and again, N of 1 fundraising journey here, but at a large venture capital firm, partners are evaluating or being exposed to thousands of deals. They're probably taking hundreds of meetings a year and making a handful of investments, and chances are they have probably seen something close to or adjacent to the business that you're trying to build. And so when you can be more authentic about what motivates you, why you're different, obviously there's a line that you need to be careful of around humility and self-awareness, but the more that you can bring that sort of authenticity to the conversation will be memorable in their mind as they're trying to pattern match across, every other deal that they've evaluated in the space that you're operating. So I did want to emphasize that I agree with you there. So your question on where does Claim go from here? In a dream scenario, we are making savings cool again. We are creating easy and affordable memories, and that is transferable across the globe. From a technical perspective and where we want to move in terms of growing the company, I see us being US based over the next 1 to 2 years, and then we'll evaluate where are the next kind of great markets to grow in. There are some aspects of our tech stack that are rather complicated. Claim is a consumer app on the front end, and in a lot of ways a fintech on the back end. We're interacting with a lot of transaction data as well, which is pulled from various issuers and sources and the like. So there's some complexity there, but we do have aspirations for this to be a global tool, a global app, in the same way that PayPal, various other fintechs are able to serve a global audience. I think we'll probably be in the 3 to 4 year horizon for that, but like I said, it's a decade-long journey, so we're still in the early stages.
Absolutely. And to emphasize on something you mentioned a couple of times, and I forget to mention before also, is about preparing yourself for the long journey. I think this is something very important. The other day, I was speaking to someone, and, they had this idea, and they kept mentioning about the exit value and the money. And then there's a very famous video by Steve Jobs where he say, like, if someone comes to me and, their only thing that they think about is just the money, I tell them, I can't help you, because you need to have a kind of passion. You need to have patience also as well. So it's a very long journey. It's not like a get rich quick scheme, right? Where, oh, I found like a good idea. Tomorrow I will put it, I will get the investment, and then someone will come and buy the company probably in 2 years, and I will become like a it can happen, of course.
It can happen, but like Tap and I, we've said this when we were evaluating ideas before Claim. Oftentimes, the most excited you'll be about something is at the beginning, when you're naive to all the challenges with building whatever you're excited about. And obviously, in the journey, we've had highs already that surpassed our excitement at the beginning. But for the most part, if you're not excited at the beginning and you're not all consumed by it at the beginning, it might not be worth your time, because things get difficult when you're trying to start something.
Yeah, and I've seen people also who got frustrated because they thought that they are excited, but they were not. They were just, I don't know what is the exact word, but they thought it's something easy to do. Let's say they underestimated, how hard is it to build something.
Yeah.
And, I always give example, even I say, forget about a startup, right? I mean, in the term of a company, I said, take podcasting, for example, as another thing to talk about. So like majority of the podcast, they don't do more than 10 episodes on average, I think 90% or something like this. And the reason is people get excited. They think they get excited about the idea of podcasting, and then they leave. And they said the same story with the startups, because you think, okay, I'm excited to build this, but actually you don't have the passion. And one exercise I hear from one of my guests, I've actually multiple guests, is, the idea is to ask, a couple of times why I'm doing this, and then you keep asking the why. It's coming from the Japanese, philosophy. It's like making the Kaizen. So you keep asking the whys, you keep asking these 5 times whys until you say, yeah, this is exactly what I want to do, because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So absolutely on this.
And I borrowed too another tip that I've kind of used. I borrowed from Brian Peterson, who's the CEO of Flexport. And on the journey, so let's say you are obsessed with something, you are excited, you're raring to go, and then the highs become high and the lows become low. I've started doing a quarterly audit of my own time and what gives me energy and what depletes my energy. And if you can essentially take a week and you can classify how you spent your time that week into 3 categories: red, yellow, and green. Red being energy depleting, green being energizing. If you then can figure out ways to either cut or delegate the reds and promote or sustain the greens, that can create a more sustainable way for you to continue to build. And it's something that, whether it's Kaizen or this strategy, it can help shape your perspective and keep your motivation for the long haul.
Absolutely, Sam. Now, as we almost came to an end, and this is again maybe a traditional question, but final words of wisdom for fellow entrepreneurs, because you have this skin in the game, as they say. You started early, as we discussed before. So kind of, what maybe not generic advice, but because especially let's focus on people who want to build for the Gen Z, because you are in this space now. So what advice you can give them, and maybe in general as well, and where people can find more about you and about Claim?
Yeah. So two quick generalized pieces of advices, then we can talk Gen Z. Number one is surround yourself with people that are smarter than you. I'm fortunate in our team that I have that, because you need people to help see around corners, whether it's investors, advisors, teammates, subordinates, etc. It's really important. And the second piece of advice is to try to zoom out and have a little bit of perspective. At a time where it feels like everything is blowing up, it is comforting, and my wife helps me with this, to realize that we have the opportunity to build something big, and we are surrounded by smart people. We do have great capital partners. We are running after a massive, massive problem. And so, lows hopefully are just blips towards building an enduring company. From a Gen Z perspective, if you're trying to go reach Gen Z, you just got to talk to them. It's so funny to go to conferences and see, people in their 30s or 40s or even up to older scratching their heads and saying, either how do we reach Gen Z, or worse, this is how to reach Gen Z. And, in the same way that social proof and word of mouth is core to everything we do, you really have to deeply and authentically understand the folks you're trying to serve. And so that for us means there's a lot of Gen Z folks on our team, and it means that we're talking to students, our customers, every single day directly. And you just got to do that, and realize that it's a blind spot if you're not part of the demographic that you're trying to serve.
Great. Thank you very much, Sam, for these insights and advices, I would say. And so where they can, the website, or maybe where they can find more?
Yeah. So our website's claim.co, claim.co. Our Instagram handle is claim_co. I am not on Instagram, but you can find me on LinkedIn / Sam Obletz, on X, Sam Obletz. My email is also, I can give to Mehmet to put in the show notes if it's interesting, but I'm happy to chat with other founders who are building. Sure.
Great. Thank you very much, Sam. The links will be in the show notes, indeed. And again, thank you very much for the time. And, I know as a founder how much busy you are, and excited at the same time to continue building the great platform you are doing. I like the idea, honestly. So this is for the audience, and this is how I end my episodes usually. If you like this episode and you discovered us now by luck, thank you very much for that. Please do me a favor if you can, subscribe and share this with friends and colleagues, because the aim of this podcast is to help founders on one side, also to educate anyone who's interested about tech, startups, entrepreneurship, because as you can see, we cover a lot from entrepreneurship perspective, tech perspective, and marketing, sales, and all the other stuff that is really pitching to investors also as well. So if you liked this episode, please subscribe to the show. You will find a lot of great episodes out there. And if you are one of the loyal fans who keep coming and keep sending me their messages, their comments, suggestions, thank you very much for doing so. Keep doing that. And finally, if you are a founder, tech leader, you have an idea, you are looking for a place to get your voice out, don't hesitate to reach out to me. You know where you find me. I'm more active on LinkedIn. Reach out, let's discuss, and we can find a time to do it. Thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll meet again very soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hit that subscribe button, share the show with your tech-savvy friends and fellow entrepreneurs, and leave us a review on your favorite podcast app. Your support means the world to us.